Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Psychology and Spirituality, a Bridge to a Better Life discussion. I'm your host, Marcia Trajano, and with me are my dear friends, Dr. Anahy Fonseca, Jussara Korngold, and Anne Sinclair. We come together from three different countries, and I'm really happy that we get to meet again. But if this is the first time you're watching our podcast like program, please note this program, Psychology and Spirituality, has these weekly talks, and they're based on the works by Joanna de Angelis. They offer this, what I call the sacred space, the safe area for us to just talk, and by talking, confront, compare, correlate, and even expand our concepts around spirituality from a psychological lens. And with that, we may have some insights, tips, and even real world advice for all of us to live a better life. Please note our program is sponsored by four organizations. They are AMI Brazil, the TV Mansão do Caminho, the U.S. Spiritist Federation, and the International Spiritist Council. Please make sure take a moment to subscribe if you haven't done so. And if you want to check us out for more information, please do so at spiritist.us. I would like to also invite you to put your comments, write your thoughts, feedback, or questions so that we can address them, if not now, in the future episode. But I wanted to bring us to this interesting concept. Well, in the US and Canada, there's this tradition that goes back, late 1800s. I believe it's 1880 something. And it's all about the groundhog. What is a groundhog? It's a rodent, like a beaver. It's about this size, right? That is really cute. And they hibernate during the winter and they go into their burrow. And about 6 weeks before springtime, in this case, it goes back to February 2nd, and that is called the Groundhog Day. So that day, February 2nd, there is a tradition that is very cute here in the US and Canada where everybody goes to see the groundhog leave their burrows and see if they see their shadows, right? There, it means that the spring will start early or later. I forget. I'm sorry, but anyways, in 1993, there is a very clever and quite intriguing comedic movie with the same title. And I understand actually that it is part of the list of 100 movies that you cannot die without watching them. Wow. So, Anaí, do you mind if we start talking about this movie and maybe some of the lessons, some of the concepts that it brings to us from a psychological and spiritual viewpoints? What do you think?
I think it's a great movie, a great movie. And when you were talking, Marcia, I remember that in the movie they say that the groundhog is the seers of seers,
Mm,
the prognosticators of prognosticators. And if he doesn't see the shadow, then it's 2 more weeks of winter. And
okay.
everybody goes, oh. And also, so there's a lot of symbolism in the film. It's with Bill Murray. I love the guy, and some guys from the Ghostbusters. It's a very cherished movie in the U.S. and over the world. And also, so I would like to add that the groundhog in the movie is all the symbolism of the groundhog,
Yes.
because the groundhog we can call in psychological terms as a psychopomp. That psychopomps are guides of the soul, and that springtime we all connect with rebirth of nature, right?
Correct.
So if he doesn't look at the symbolism, If he doesn't see his shadow, then winter, when everything is dormant and everything is cold, it's going to go on for 2 more weeks. And two is also a symbolism of duality. So we
Correct.
will be in this dual world. But if he sees his shadow, have been talking about the concept of the shadow some previous meetings. So if he sees the shadow, if he faces his own shadow, then rebirth, right? So then springtime, when everything comes alive again, will happen. So, and just to give you some context, and I would love to hear Anne and Jussara about that. So I got a little bit of the symbolism of the groundhog for you guys. And so it says, if the groundhog crossed your path, as it did with Bill Murray, the character, okay, his character in the movie, it is asking you to explore your state of consciousness more deeply. For by doing so, you will be able to find answers within yourself. You just haven't been digging deep enough to find your own roots. This guy, so this is a psychopomp, a symbolism of the psychopomp of the groundhog. And also, just one more sentence, then I'll give back to
Mhm.
you guys. So, alternatively, the groundhog could be warning you that you have crossed someone's boundaries, or similarly, that someone is crossing yours. The best way to resolve this situation is with respect and with the heart. Okay, so I'll give it back to you guys to see the symbolism of the groundhog before we talk about the characters.
So, before I go in, let me just say, Josada or Ann, after you start talking about it, just let us know. Have you even watched the movie? But go ahead, Josada.
Yeah, I watched it many years ago, and not actually looking for the psychological perspective.
Hmm.
But I think I watched it twice or three times because
Oh, wow.
I thought it was really symbolic, and at least in terms of spirituality. But one thing that I was thinking while you were talking, Marcia and Anahy, is in relation to uh, try to understand, even from the physical aspect, what does that mean? That it means, at least for us here in the US or Canada, 2 more weeks of winter, which when you hear about it, it's, yeah, oh my God, it's nothing, just 2 weeks. No, it's not 2 weeks. Winters here can last for 9 months, right? And so 2 more weeks is really not, we're not looking forward to that. It's not just 2 more weeks. We've been dealing with that at least for, a really heavy winter for 6 months. And but in terms of the symbolism as well, I was thinking that being so close to the groundhog and acknowledging its presence and all the symbolic meaning that there is in seeing the shadow, and being almost there but not there. You need more. You need more time. And yeah, it's sad in a way, but we know that it's going to happen. It's just a matter of how much more time we will need.
That's excellent, Josada. If you don't mind me saying so, it's those things from a material perspective, the symbolism. Oh, what does it mean to have the courage, which is a lesson that Joanna de Angelis brings over and over and over again. The courage and the patience to get to the achievements that we need for this process. of individuation. But Anne, have you seen it? And if not, I can give you a quick synopsis. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
just one thing. It's like, uh, very much like in our spiritual process.
Hmm.
In terms of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, it is there. It is going to happen, but it depends on you how long you are going to take. I mean, how much more are you going to prolong this encounter?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Anne, what are your thoughts?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I have not seen the movie. It's on now on my list to see.
Do
But
you want me to give a quick synopsis just to pique your interest?
in a minute, let me just.
Okay, go ahead.
I did have some thoughts as Anahy was speaking, because also the groundhog is not something that, an animal that we naturally relate to here in the UK. But what spirit do for me, and I know for a lot of people, spirit quite often use symbols from nature to help to give spiritual teaching, because you can hold on to it and you can develop it. So like even like the groundhog, you immediately say, oh, it's this cute animal, but it needs to dig deeper to find its roots. It needs to see
Mhm.
its shadow. It can have many
Absolutely.
features. So when you hold that image, so I'm quite a visual learner. So I hold an image in my mind. I can go developing and understanding things better. So one of the things that like I really like about this podcast and studying together is that you don't need to be a psychologist in order to understand what the spiritual energy is bringing in terms of psychology to help us on our pathway. So we have in the past used very sort of intellectual methods and sometimes more emotional methods. She's offering another method to add to this basket of tools that we have available to help us navigate our lives and to give meaning to our lives, so that we're not just living the life of eating, drinking, sleeping, having babies, and then dying, that we have a life that has meaning at a deeper level. And I love the image of the groundhog having to go back and dig in, because that's what we need to do to ourselves. We need to dig into ourselves, that we're looking on the outside. We sometimes have our life on the outside quite well organized, but what about going back inside? Because that is where we're going to find the true answers to our eternal questions.
Love
So
it.
that's
Thank
what came to me from that. But the movie yet to be seen. So if you want to give a little synopsis of the movie, if that's going to be relevant going forwards, might help people like myself who haven't actually seen it, if you're going to refer to it.
All right. So, Anna, before you go back to talking about the movie and the psychological meaning or some of the teachings of the movie, I wanted to tell for anyone who may not have seen it, as I said, it's a 1993 movie. And Anna, you mentioned, right, it was done with the crew, a lot of the people that made the Ghostbusters. But the storyline is really all about this very cynical and we can call him narcissistic. You can call him misanthropic. You can even talk him as a egotistical, arrogant man. So he embodies all of that very self-centered person. Bill Murray is the artist that plays Phil, and he's a weatherman, right? So think in terms of his ego. He all of his self-importance is the ability to do the weather, and he is asked to go to a city, and it's a very small town for the ceremony of the Groundhog Day, where they're going to see if the groundhog sees his shadow or not. And while he's reluctant and all of it is playing on, the storyline is about this loop that he cannot move out of it. So every day, no matter what he does during the day, right, he goes back to 6 in the morning, February 2nd, and he relives over and over and over again. So his response to that reliving of the day without any implications or impact to anybody but him, as we now find it later, is something that is very puzzling to him, but it's very enlightening as we watch the movie. So, Dr. Nai, go ahead and take the mic and tell us about this movie, if you don't mind.
I love this movie, and I love talking to you all about this. I told you I'm kind of a nerd person. I love the movies and science fiction and all. So I think this movie is a great example of the process that Jung called individuation. That it's not about us being an individual in this egocentric thing, you know. It's not about individualization. I think there is this concept also in English, but individuation, it's about being whole, as what Anne and Jussara they were saying about
Right.
knowing ourselves and the acceptance, and don't being afraid, as Marcia said, being courageous enough to dig within ourselves. And so Jung, in a very simple way here, he says the development of personality, it's a question of saying yes to oneself, of considering oneself as the most important of tasks, the most important, of being aware of everything one does. That's not kind of easy, but we have to dig and be persistent. So, of being aware of everything one does, keeping oneself constantly in front of one's eyes in all our doubtful aspects. So, being, and he says that the goal is not to overcome our personal psychology. What does that mean? Not trying to be perfect, right? But to become familiar with it, familiar with ourselves, with the way that we function. Just as Anne was saying that Joanna de Angelis tries to, you know, to give us these different tools and expand our consciousness so we won't be afraid anymore of ourselves. And if we are not afraid of ourselves, we are not afraid of others. We don't have to project onto others, you know, our shadows, right? And then we can have springtime and not go on in this winter and this cold and things. So this individuation includes a growing knowledge of one's unique psychological reality,
What does
including,
that mean, Anahy?
yeah, including our strengths and
Mm-hmm.
limitations, because
Mm-hmm.
each one of us is unique. And then I would love to hear you again, especially Jussara, in terms of reincarnation, the concept that the spiritist knowledge brings to all of us, that when we reincarnate, we are in constant learning,
Mm-hmm.
and we are evolving, our consciousness are evolving. So anything that we haven't learned yet or haven't got exactly right in that previous life, we will have this wonderful opportunity of going again through the basic challenges and try to learn again. So not being afraid and understanding our unique experiences, not only in this life, in this material life, of course, but in a broader way, with all the different experiences that our spirit has. It's there deep within our unconscious. So we don't have to worry about that, because we have, according to Joanna, a higher consciousness that it's deep within our unconscious. Jung's called the self with capital S, okay? But we could call our higher self, our higher, and Joanna says it's our spirit. So the way that, we were talking about the groundhog as a psychopomp, a guide of the soul. So this higher self, okay, our spirit has a way to communicating with our egos through the symbolisms, through experiences, synchronicities, and experiences of the sacred that we all have through our lifetime. But we have to pay attention, as Jung is saying, So the individuation process is this development, maturity of the personality, the strength of the ego to calm down and to accept this stock that within our soul, our higher self, okay, our spirit is always calling, look, pay attention to this, pay attention to this symbolism, pay attention to this thing that is happening in your life. And they are so worried with waking up, eating, going to work that you are not paying attention, like in dreams. So all our strength and limitations, right? And if we put this together and pay really attention and look at ourselves, then we can appreciate all of our experiences, everything that we are, the light that we already have, and also what is still shadow on us. And we, according to Jung, can appreciate humanity in general, because we are all part, brothers and sisters, all developing consciousness together. I think this is a beautiful image, but I would like to hear more about, so that we can discuss more about the movie.
Jussara, what do you think?
I would like to go first. Um, of it's so amazing how much we can learn right from the movies as well, and how inspired many times the directors, the writers are when putting someone, and how we can look for symbolism in everything, right? And in this movie, and talking about reincarnation, it's very interesting because like waking up every day at the same time and everything happening the same way, the only thing that changed is him, his perspective, his understanding of life, his understanding of himself. Because at first he arrives at this small little town, very posh.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I mean, I am the best. I'm going to see, those natives from this little town, and all of a sudden he starts seeing his behavior, or in relation to everyone, and so he's giving one opportunity after the next. And when we are going to be talking about that in terms of reincarnation, in terms of our contact with the unconscious, I really recommend that we use it for our studies. This book, Life Challenges and Solutions, beautifully translated, that can explain to us so well when Joanna de Angelis puts here Jung talking and studying the duality of the soul, the human beings, and how this reflects in the state of dreams, bringing the symbolism. And Joanna de Angelis says the following: agreeing completely with the thought of the remarkable researcher of the human psyche, we would only dare propose that in such dream-related representations, many of the animals and animal characters are the reminiscence, the revivals of past lives stored in the unconscious, thanks to the perispirit or intermediary body between the spirit and the material body. So this remark by Joanna de Angelis is very respectful, places us consciously in this situation where there are more pieces in the board that we know. Okay, yes. You have the board, you know the game, you're thinking that you know everything that is there, but no. So here we are not saying that what we have achieved in terms of knowledge, and like she says, his remarkable researcher, and we know that she was, the professor of Jung, but there was not in the context yet the general acceptance of reincarnation. And so we're just missing that, but we can learn a lot from this the movie in this situation, seeing very clear what reincarnation means, including the fact that sometimes we think that we are going to be so different and living completely different experiences. No, it's about the same until you learn to deal with what you have to deal. So that's why there are no leaps and bounds in terms of this spiritual progress. It is everything up to us.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it, Jussara. And I just wanted to address one thing that you said. Reincarnation was not well accepted in the Western world during the time of Carl Gustav Jung, right? As just to remind us that in the East, in the Eastern philosophies, it's well accepted, but for us, as we are all here speaking in English to this audience, most of us are embedded in the Western society, and it is so difficult to even understand the concept. But a movie, like many other symbols, really helps us understand, including what you said, Jasada. There are no leaps and bounds. He, in this case, so the character of Bill Murray, when he woke up, he grew, he learned from that one day. And by the way, Anahy, before I go to use Anne, uh, did you know that this movie, when they were writing the script, they talked about how long it's going to be his Groundhog Day, and they're talking about, oh, it has to be many. This is from the writers. I think it has to be many lifetimes. Like he couldn't achieve what he needed to achieve, which is that enlightenment, until perhaps an entire lifetime, if not more, which is interesting. And then they said, well, what do you think? And some of the individuals that were there, very pragmatic and very material in their thought processes, said, oh, 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks, because we're talking now about aging of the population, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he said, no, let's go in between, and let's establish that his learnings are at least about 10 years, because as he wakes up, that experience of one day, which he repeats, becomes 2 days, all the way to 10 years. But it required the desire, the will to stop a behavior to become this individual looking for his own shadow, for his own self awareness, self discovery. But with that, Anne, do you want to comment? I hijacked the conversation for just a bit.
Uh, uh, we just learned. I mean, I learned so much from all of you and just having these conversations. And I would like to encourage people to set up, conversations, have a meeting for tea, for coffee, and
Yes.
get a theme and say, let's have a look into theme, or let's look at this movie, and just sort of raise that conversation, because we can all learn from one another. It's just so amazing. But I was thinking, and as Jussara rightly said, progress is not in leaps and bounds. And it was coming to me the image of a rose. And when you have a closed rose, if you want it to open, you can't force the petals open. You have to wait for the right time. It will naturally open. And if you keep looking at it, it won't make it open faster because it takes the time of nature. So our perception of time also is very interesting, as I have experience in childbirth as a professional, and also as a grandmother and mother. And in childbirth, there is something that's called time distortion. So you can spend 10 hours in labor and it can seem like half an hour. Yet 10 minutes might seem like 2 hours. So your time perception becomes distorted. Just like if you're having a crash, suddenly people describe you're going in slow motion, time goes very slow. So this sensation that we are caught up in this world where time is very defined, it flows, because when we are having fun, time flies. When we're enjoying things, time flies. when we're bored or angry or whatever, time is stuck. So we can then start to think about how we're spending our days. How does our day fly? Does our day sort of drag? And we can take on meaning to everything in our lives. So I was just thinking, like, in terms of, we talked about the external and the internal, and, accepting ourselves and the shadow self of ourselves helps us then to become accepting of others, because we don't expect perfection from anyone. And the fear that we have of being imperfect, and just where does this come from? Because we have all these incarnations, we're dragging this feeling of guilt, of the sins, of the imperfections, and we're trying to hide that away in some way and present our good face, while all our sort of negative impulses, we're trying to hide them under the rug. But actually they're part of us, and we need to let them come up, and we need to look at them and say, yes, I still have these impulses of impatience, of being aggressive when somebody steps on my little toe, and acknowledging it. Because when you acknowledge it, it becomes part of you. And that's what I love what Jung says. It's not about us being perfect. It's about us being accepting of all our humanity. And so if we know that we have a tendency to be aggressive when the weather's hot or when we're hungry or whatever, we take preventative action, okay, I might be agitated in this situation. Let me think how I'm going to deal with it. And we can start working on ourselves in a positive and loving way, and not in a chastising and persecuting way as was in the way of the past. So a new way of looking at ourselves, and really learning to do that basic thing that Jesus said to us: love yourselves. How can we love ourselves if we don't know ourselves? We need to allow those parts of ourselves that we are hiding or we are too afraid to look at, that are in the darkness, in the shadow, to allow them to come forward to us and to embrace them. Because if we can't embrace ourselves, how can we embrace our neighbors? And how can we then make this world into a world of love? I love this because it's a challenge that we can all tackle little by little, petal by petal. There's no tractor driving through. We just need to go develop this sensitivity towards it. And as we progress, we go like, the image I have is like, we go like in a spiral. So instead of like going in a straight line, we go in a spiral, and we come back to the same problem here that's in this column. But the next time we come up, we are like on the floor above, and we have a different perspective. And the next time that problem comes up, we're slightly up, and we start seeing it from a different perspective, and it doesn't seem so daunting or scary anymore. And that's what experience gives us. Being there, I've been here before, okay, and it's not about saying, last time I made a mess of it. No, it's just thinking, okay, let's tackle this in a slightly different angle this time. Let's see how that goes, without judgment of how we did it before, perhaps. So those are the thoughts that are coming to me. Thank you.
Love it. Anahy, what are your thoughts now?
Well, I was listening to all of you. It's great perspectives and complementary, if we can say. But I think when Jussara and also when Anne are talking about their thoughts, I think when Jussara said she was talking about also the ego, and also Anne, and the ego actually is in the movie, the guy, when he's in the first times that he wakes up and see it's the same day repeating itself, we can see him losing control. He's all vain and all very dressed up and all, and then little by little he starts losing control. So we can see the ego kind of falling apart in a sense of this loss of control. And also about the time that you guys were talking about, so this distortion of time that Anne had. So little by little, he goes out of chronos, the time of the clock, okay, yes, of this duality. And he gets into kairos, that it's the emotional and spiritual time, if we could say, just to simplify. And then, of course, because he gets so desperate of losing this control, in the beginning. Well, it's not spoiler alert because it's from 90 something the movie, but in the beginning of this process, he thinks he is God. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie. Remember the dialogue
Yes.
that the lady, the leading lady, right? His romantic partner said, "Oh, because he's eating a lot of stuff and drinking
Yes.
a lot of
Yeah.
coffee and smoking," and said, "What are you doing?" She's saying something like, well, because the thing is that he had at that point when he loses control and he's not able to get control again. And let's not forget that he's kind of in love with the lady, but he can't acknowledge because he thinks she's like below him because
Yes.
he's so very important and she's just a small producer and he didn't want to realize that. So whatever, when he tries to, to be in control or at least to gain some control and he's not able to, he tries to kill himself many times, many from all different ways. And he always wakes up in the same day, doesn't matter what he does. So in the beginning, when we're talking about reincarnation, so in the beginning he thinks he's God because okay, he tried to kill himself and he was. And so when he eats a lot of stuff and is drinking coffee and smoking, said, "What are you doing?" She said, "Well, this day keeps repeating itself." She doesn't believe, she thinks he's crazy or whatever, has is joking with her. And but since I can't kill myself, so I think I'm God. And says, "Oh, I have years and years of Catholic school, and I can tell you, you are
You're
not."
not.
And then he says, "Well, I don't think I'm the God, but I think I'm a
Hey,
God."
God. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so what thing, and the impatience and the lack of empathy, it's everything in the movie. So first he tries to do when it's all about the symbolism of reincarnation. You are not going to kill yourself. You are just going to postpone what you have to deal with, as Anne and Jussara were talking about. And so let's enjoy this beautiful opportunity that we have to expand our conscious, to learn better, to go to the other step of the stair, right? And in a more conscious way. And also, I would like to point out in this what Anne said and Jusada said, that he learns to get the lady, his romantic part. He learns to speak in French
Yes.
because she is a specialist in 17th or 18th, I think 18th century French poetry. So, and I think the guys calculated also how long it would take for a person that doesn't know anything, not only to speak in French, but to be specialist in French poetry. And then he learned the classics like Mozart, Beethoven. He learns to play piano. So how long that would take to a person like him, right? So that's all about concept and of reincarnation and of like Anne and Jusada were talking. And last but not least, he learns how to love.
Can I
Because
add
when
something?
we say, yeah,
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but I think there's also something very significant that all of you who are going to watch the movie may pick up on, is in addition to learning very intellectual aspects, poetry, music, so on and so forth, there's something key, which is regardless of how he start to control everything, he cannot control the death of a homeless man, an older man.
yeah,
And but he said, this is, he becomes again the ego. This is my day. I know all the variables. So there's something about playing out his fantasies, right? He robs a bank. He eats to absurd, all of it, but he's controlling the variables and he cannot control the death of that man, not even a single time, right? But the fact is, he then start to control other accidents, death, potential death. And in doing that, because an egoic sense of control, he develops his empathy. I think it's beautiful, Anahy. So
Beautiful.
he becomes known by the end of the one day because it's repeating, and he calculates exactly when a boy falls into the tree and he catches it,
Yeah.
or when a guy is about to die from whatever he's eating and he does the Heimlich maneuver. Oh, I think Jussara may have an issue. Technically, let's wait until she comes back. But anyways, so Anahy and the element of egoic driven element, it doesn't matter. He still was able to grow in, through love. You were talking about love, right? Grow through his process of individuation, when he no longer looked at himself, but he started to look at the environment and be of service, to be charitable in a way that is love in action. Those are my
Actually,
thoughts.
actually, just to complement what you're saying, Marcia, uh, he doesn't need in a certain way, or he's able to look outside of himself, as Anne
Correct.
was saying, of the other human beings, because he has looked for a long, long time. Let's go back to the groundhog. He has digged very deeply within himself.
Hmm.
Only when he has done that, and you guys are going to see in the movie, people that haven't already seen it, only when he's able to dig deep enough and accept that he, as Marcia said, he doesn't have control. He's not
Hmm.
the God. He doesn't have control when other people are going to die, or
Hmm. Hmm.
uh, and only when he sees all his impatience, his vanity, his self-centeredness.
Yes.
So when he digs deep enough, then he's able to really love thy neighbor, right? Because then he's
Yes.
able to understand his limits, and to understand where he can help and where he can't, because it's out of human possibilities. And acceptance, as Anne said, is everything about acceptance. And also, I think the bigger challenge in the movie is to understand that you cannot overstep free will, that we were talking about in the symbolism of the groundhog. You
Hmm.
cannot cross other people's path and make them love you. You have to be with the love that you have for other, that frees people, that gives people this freedom of being what they are, not trying to change anyone, and just feeling the love that you have for everyone. When you do that, then the love will come back to you. Okay, only when he surrenders to the fact that he cannot make her love him, right? Doesn't matter how perfect the day he makes
Yes.
the day. She always, I don't want to give too many spoilers, but
Uh,
it all ends in the same, so
yeah.
in the same way. So when he realized that he cannot make her love him, okay, then he goes on to learn French poetry, to learn that he laughed at this in the first time that told him that she was specialist in 18th century French poetry. He laughs in the same time.
Yes. Yeah.
So what happens when he surrenders to this, that he's not able to make her love him, pretending that he knows something that he doesn't care about,
Hmm.
and then he goes to this learning about himself,
Hmm.
his possibilities. And then he finds joy in learning French poetry. He
Hmm.
finds joy in learning to play the piano and the composers. And
Yes.
then he does that because of the joy of the soul, because he's complete. And when he has achieved his individuation, then he calls her attention, and then they vibrate, let's say, in the same way, and then love comes to both of them. I think it's a beautiful way, as Anne was saying, that to love thyself as thy neighbor. So first we have to learn to love ourselves. That's individuation in a psychological point of view, and then we can learn to love each other and to love humanity.
All right, I love it. We are coming to an end of our discussion, and Anahy, sorry that somehow Jussara had to drop, but I love the fact that we're coming together, right, and talking and learning and bringing different perspective, but to a subject that is so complex, and I'm talking specifically about the individuation process as Carl Gustav Jung brought to us, and it's further broken down from a spiritual perspective by the works of Joanna de Angelis. But in saying that, we're here today to talk about what does the Groundhog Day have to do with understanding individuation, and it is about just what you said. It's the meeting of, I'm trying to do it, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the meeting of the self, capital S, that immortal spirit, who we are in our all of our essence, which includes all the the heritage, right? All the archives that we bring from past experiences, including the collective unconscious, or the many spirits of the time, the zeitgeist of many times that we lived, right, previously. So we bring all of that, which includes our shadow, and meeting our ego that protects this external persona, so well crafted, so protected, right, in our structure of our egoic structure, to protect ourselves. We want to be successful, and we keep forgetting that we're not what we see. We're much more than that. So dig in. Let's go deep in our burrows, individually, but collectively speaking. Let's go into our burrows and understand. And do you have any final questions before we go, as well as you, Anahy?
No, no, thank you. I think it's been a lovely meeting. Lots of things for me to think about during the next few weeks, I think.
Thanks, Anahy. What about you?
I'll just tell everyone that to be in harmony, with all our neighbors, to be in harmony with ourselves, it's all about digging, as you said. Being courageous, being not afraid of ourselves, because it's all within ourselves. And this kingdom of love and light that we all want, this peace that we all want to live in, it's right here, right within. It's not that it's easy, actually, because we have to struggle a little bit with our egos, as the movie said. But we have time. We have endless time. We are immortal spirits. So this is a wonderful gift that is given to us by the higher power, the transcendent one, as we want to call God. And let's use this beautiful gift, and let's enjoy ourselves in the ride, right? Let's
Yes.
be joyful. Let's be happy and grateful for all these, wonderful opportunities that we have.
Every single one, right? But with that, I want to say thank you both, and I will thank Jussara individually. But I want to thank all of you who are here watching this podcast-like discussion, and I hope to see you in our next episode. Bye bye.
Bye bye.